want to say something that most people in the AI conversation are not saying. Everyone is talking about what AI is going to do for your business. Nobody is talking about what it's already doing to the founder that's running one. And I'm not talking about job displacement or automation or any of the macro stuff. I'm talking about what is happening right now inside the people I work with, inside the people watching this, inside the founders who have built real things and are still somehow more stuck than they've ever been. There are studies that are starting to come out now, okay? And they're starting to come out on this. And they are catching up to what I've been watching firsthand for the last 2 years. So let's actually talk about this. Here's what the data is starting to show. AI is accelerating decision fatigue at a rate the human brain was never designed to handle. Let that land for just a second. Think about that. Founders were among the most cognitively taxed people on the planet before any of this started, okay? Hundreds of high stakes decisions a day, most with incomplete information, most with consequences that compound, running on less sleep than they should, carrying more weight than they show, and calling it momentum. Okay, now you hand that person a tool that can generate 100 strategies, 50 action plans, and 30 different versions of the same email before 9 a.m. The result is not clarity, y'all. The result is faster noise. And with faster noise comes the things that quietly destroys founders before anything visible does. And that number one thing that I've seen is fatigue. We're not talking about physical fatigue. We're not talking about cognitive fatigue. We're talking about decision fatigue. The kind that makes a founder who is fully capable of thinking at an elite level start making reactive, small, fear-based decisions. The kind that someone brilliant, it makes them look average. The kind that shows up as procrastination, as avoidance, as the low-level paralysis that is dressed up in busyness. And I want to be direct about something. The tool is not the problem. The gap between the tool and the operator is. And right now, that gap is widening at a speed most founders are not prepared for. There is something else happening underneath all of this that nobody is naming. The more AI absorbs execution, the more it quietly erodes the thing that made the founder powerful in the first place. Their thinking, their judgment, their capacity to sit with a hard problem and work through it. This is what I call brain attrition. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It happens gradually, little by little. Passive use, offloading, reaching out for the tool before reaching out to your own mind. And the most founders at risk are the ones who are technically performing because they look fine from the outside while something essential is quietly going on the inside. I want you to think about a fighter pilot for a second. A modern combat aircraft can pull maneuvers that would cause the pilot to black out. Even with a G-suit specifically designed to keep the blood in the brain under extreme gravitational force, the pilot will never push that jet to its actual ceiling. The human body has a hard limit. The machine does not. AI is that jet. It is not slowing down. It is not waiting for the nervous system to regulate. It is not going to pause output because your prefrontal cortex is already overloaded from 30 decisions you made before lunch. And the founder is treating it like an upgrade, search engine, paste in a question, paste out an answer, call it strategy. Those founders are not leveling up. They are outsourcing the only thing that made them dangerous in the first place, their friggin' brain, their thinking. The highest value thing a founder does, the thing that no model can replicate, is the ability to make a great decision in genuine ambiguity. No template, no prompt, real complexity, real stakes, real judgment. That capability does not get stronger by default. It gets stronger by training. And right now, most founders are not training it. They are offloading it. Listen, I fought professionally and trained for years. And the thing I learned in that environment is the gym teaches you this, okay? If you pay close enough attention, is that the physical preparation is actually the easiest part. The hardest part is what happens in the mind when the pressure is real, when it's not a drill, when the consequences are immediate, and there's no more time to prepare. The fighters who lasted were not always the most gifted physically. Let me tell you that. They were the ones whose mental architecture was like a safe, like they could hold pressure without fracturing. The ones who could hit and recalibrate, the ones who could be losing and still think clearly, the ones who had built an interior structure that was actually functional under extreme load, those are the ones who were winning. I started working with founders and I saw the exact same dynamic playing out in a different arena. Their ceiling was never the strategy or the offer. It wasn't the team or the marketing. Those things matter, but they were rarely ever the actual ceiling. The actual ceiling was the founder's capacity to think and decide, right? And lead at their business, the level their business needed them. I sat across from people who had built 8-figure companies, were running the same unexamined patterns they started when they were making 200 grand a year. People who were optimized for everything external and had almost no internal architecture for what was happening inside of themselves. And now AI is making that gap faster, louder, and harder to ignore. And here's what I want to say about the upper limit. Okay, Gay Hendricks wrote a book. It's called The Big Leap. If you haven't read it, read it. The idea is that we each have an internal thermostat for how much success, happiness, and expansion we will allow ourselves to experience. And when we exceed that, we unconsciously self-sabotage, not because we're broken, because we have not yet built the interior to match the exterior. That is not a mindset problem. It's an identity problem, okay? Mindset's important, but it's identity. The founder who keeps hitting the same ceiling is not hitting a marketing ceiling. They're hitting the ceiling of the version of themselves that built the business. And that version was never designed to take them to the next level. That is what building the builder actually means. That's the work I do. Not optimizing the systems, not adding more tactics, not downloading another framework, building the person behind the business, the human underneath it all, the internal operating system that everything else runs on. Because when that changes, everything changes, not as a theory, as a result. And here is the uncomfortable part. Most people were not wired for entrepreneurship to begin with. It's about 1% to 5%. And that's not an insult. It's just true. By statistics, 1% to 3% is actually their statistic. Building something real from nothing, okay, demands a psychological and emotional architecture that is very rare. It requires the capacity to hold vision and uncertainty at the same time, to make consequential decisions without enough information, to lead other human beings through ambiguity without showing every crack. The architecture has to be built. It cannot be downloaded. It cannot be skipped. What AI has done is remove the friction that used to make that development mandatory. It validates every idea. It writes every plan. It tells people what they want to hear with enough detail and confidence that it can look like a business. And so you have an entire generation of founders entering the arena without ever having developed the capacity to survive what the arena actually requires. The first hard year, the first real setback, the moment where it was not working, there is no obvious answer, and the weight of it starts pressing on everything. And when that moment comes, and it always comes, AI cannot stand in for the foundation. There is no prompt for that, okay? Let me tell you what I think is already happening. And I say this without drama. The gap between elite founders and everyone else is becoming a canyon, okay? Not because of access to tools. Every founder on the planet has access to the same tools right now, right? Because of the capacity to think through problems that do not have a clean answer. Okay, you can't just ChatGPT this shit, because of the emotional intelligence to lead under real pressure, not managed pressure, because of the ability to look at a situation with genuine complexity and make a call that moves things forward without certainty and without a safety net. There is no certainty. That has always been the highest order skill in this game. It's just that now with AI absorbing the execution layer, it is the only layer left that actually differentiates you. Right? Computing, processing, generating, drafting, analyzing. AI is genuinely unmatched at all of that. But real thinking, deep contemplation, the kind of problem solving where the stakes are actual and the answers are not obvious. It requires full human presence to navigate. That is not getting replaced, okay? That's not going anywhere. And here is the thing that most people are missing. The more AI expands and makes mistakes and generates outputs that someone has to audit, evaluate, and course correct, the more essential that human capability becomes. Someone has to catch what the model gets wrong. Someone has to see around the corner the model cannot model. Someone has to make the call. That person is going to be worth more than their weight in gold, more than they ever have been, okay? And I know what some of you are thinking. I'm already performing. This doesn't apply to me. I hear that. And I want to offer you something in return. Okay, so just listen to this. Every founder I've worked with who thought that exact thought had it because their external performance was masking what was actually happening internally. The gap between public output and private experience, that is not a character flaw. That is what high performers do. You get good at functioning above your actual threshold. The second objection I hear is, I just need better tools and better strategy. And I'll say this directly. If strategy alone was going to solve it, wouldn't it have solved it by now? The founder who has been stuck in the same pattern for 3 years does not need another framework, dude. They need to understand why the frameworks they already have are not getting implemented, and that's a personal problem. And the third one, I don't have time to stop and work on how I think. Well, I'll tell you this, the founders who say they do not have time to work on their thinking are the ones whose businesses are most dependent on them doing it. And there is no way around this. So what does actually working on this look like? Let's talk about this, okay? The highest performing operators in any stakes domain share three things in common. First, they have developed the ability to excavate what is actually driving their decisions, not the story they tell publicly, not the rational in the deck, okay? The actual underlying pattern, the real belief system, the thing that is running underneath everything like code on a machine that nobody ever sanctioned. Most founders are making decisions from code that was written for a different operating system, an earlier version of themselves, one that was built for survival, for proving something, for the chapter they are no longer in. And until that gets surfaced and examined, it runs everything. Second, they rebuild the decision-making architecture, okay, consciously with actual frameworks, thought stacking, which I'll teach you about, structured contemplation, the ability to separate the reactive response from the considered one. This is trainable. It's not mystical. It's a skill set that the highest performers in military, athletics, business have been developing intentionally for decades. Third, they integrate. This is where the work actually shows up in behavior, not in the insight, which is easy. It's in the choices made on a Tuesday when it's hard and nobody's watching. That is integration. That is where patterns actually change. This is the ERR method, which I created. It's excavate, reconstruct, and integrate. It's not a theory. It's the architecture under every meaningful transformation, which I have personally witnessed. And in the AI era, it is not a luxury. It is the foundation everything else gets built on. One more thing I want to leave with you, okay? As all of this accelerates, as the digital layers get louder and more overwhelming, something else is going to happen alongside of it. A growing hunger for what cannot be automated. Real presence, genuine connection, leadership you can actually feel when you're in the room with a real person, okay? And the founders who are investing in becoming that for their teams, for their clients, and for communities, they're not just going to be competent leaders, but actual humans who have done the real work. They will not just perform better in this era. They will be friggin' amazing. They will become the rarest thing in it, okay? Because AI is going to do everything else. And the humans are going to be human. The humans who are truly high level, who have built the interior architecture to match the exterior ambition, who can lead other people through genuine uncertainty and with common clarity, they are going to be fewer and fewer of them as the bar gets raised. Just look around you right now, and they are going to be priceless. Okay, if you've been watching this and something landed, I want to say one thing clearly. This is not about adding a bunch of shit to your plate, okay? It's not about adding more to what you're already doing. This is another tool. This is not another tool, a system optimization. This is about building the thing underneath all of it that makes everything else work. If you're a founder who's built something real, past the early grind, past the first scaling phase, and you are filling a ceiling that is not about strategy, I want to talk to you, okay? I want to have a conversation, and a real conversation about what is actually going on, whether what I do is relevant to where you are, and whether we can actually grow past that. The link to apply for my private advisory is in the description. And if you want the deeper work, the writing, the frameworks, the thinking that I do not put on social, get on the list. The Substack link is also below. If this resonated, share it with the founder in your life who needs to hear it. I will see you in the next video.